Another film that I enjoyed more than I thought I was going to, because again, the word of mouth on it had not been good, is Lucy in the Sky, which stars Natalie Portman as an astronaut unable to readjust to life on Earth. It's co-written and directed by Noah Hawley, and it's another case of a sort of artistically ambitious project that didn't manage to find the audience that it needed or perhaps deserved in the States. So the story is that she's called Lucy Kohler, and at the beginning of the film, we see her looking down on the Earth from above. She's actually in, what do you call it, spacewalking. They call it spacewalking. Outside of the ship.
She's outside of the.
She's outside of the ship. There's a word for it. This is like me in airplane station. Do they call it spacewalking?
I guess they do.
Whatever they're doing, she's outside of the ship and she's looking down on the Earth passing below her, and we hear the thing saying, "Okay, time to come in. We got to go back now." And she then goes back down to Earth. And when she gets back down to Earth, she realizes that the problem is that she's been in a position when she's been outside in space and looked down Earth. And this is something that, is talked about quite a lot in terms of, astronauts. How do you then readjust to life down on Earth, which involves the ordinary stuff, the day-to-day stuff, the not God's eye view of the world that you are in an extremely privileged position to experience?
Just feel a little off. No, not off. It's more, you know how it is. You go up there, you see everything, the whole universe. And everything here looks so small. We're so small. And then you splash down, you go to Applebee's, Monday Night Football, clip your toenails. And all you can think about is,
when can I go back?
As requested. 5 whiskeys.
There's 4 of us, Professor.
How could that possibly happen?
Must have been
rounding error.
Oh, that's why he likes you so much. You laugh at his old jokes.
So the unmistakable voice there of John Hamm, who is a colleague, and they are now in a group of people, all of whom have had the privilege of being outside the world, and all of whom understand that thing. There's a discussion about the fact that when a particular astronaut went into space and goes on the dark side of the moon, suddenly found themselves in floods of tears because they realised that was what properly being alone was. Now, I have to say, I have a soft spot for this story anyway, because one of my favourite films is The Ninth Configuration, and one of the things in The Ninth Configuration is the central character, Manfred Cutshall, Billy Cutshall in the film, Manfred Cutshall in the novel, won't go to space. And the whole thing is a conversation between him and a psychiatrist about why he won't go to space. And the reason he won't is that he's lost his faith. And he's terrified that if you're in space and there is no God, then that is really, truly alone. And this is a subject which we saw recently dealt with in Aniara. I was talking about that Swedish science fiction film about a spaceship adrift, unhinged, from, off course, just drifting off into the abyss. And really what it's to do with is cosmic loneliness. And what this is, it is sort of loosely inspired by a real life story, and there has been quite a lot of stuff written about how much it diverges from the real life story, because it's not it is its own story. And people say, well, why didn't it do this and why didn't it do that and why did it do that? It's because the reason is it is a piece of fiction that happens to be inspired by a real life story of somebody not being able to deal with being back on Earth and their life unraveling. And what happens with Natalie Portman's character is that, having up until now been a sort of somebody who lived by the rules, she finds that she can no longer do that. She can no longer deal with, going to the swimming pool, going to the supermarket, and there's a void in her character. I know that the film has not been warmly received, but here's what I liked about it. Firstly, I think apparently the role was earmarked for Reese Witherspoon, who was going to do it, but then was called off to do something else for television. And there's a weird comparison between it and the role that Reese Witherspoon plays in that film Wild, which you really liked. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was a terrific movie. It's got a really good score by Jeff Russo, which is very, very evocative, very, very haunting, it has that captures that sense of wonderment and disorientation that the central character has. But mainly, it's to do with the fact that I bought into Natalie Portman's fracturing state of mind. I bought into her character having experienced something that they cannot then unexperience, and feeling that they are completely out of place back down on Earth and desperately just wanting to get back out into space again. Because for me, that was what the film was about. I mean, the film was not for me about, oh, how closely did this relate to anything that actually happened in the real world. It was about that. It was about Natalie Portman playing a character who had become unhinged by an experience which was simply incomprehensible. And I thought on that level, it worked.
What's it called again?
It's called Lucy in the Sky because she's called Lucy and she's
was-
in the sky.
I understand.